Pokemon's ability can make or break its usefulness, in-game and competitively. So when a Pokemon gets a new ability, or has an old one changed, it can completely shift its function. Today we're going to look at the biggest changes to Pokemon abilities, and there are a few big ones I'm going to cover that had a major redemption arc. Several Pokemon had additional abilities added from generations 3 to 4, so I'm not going to cover all those, or all the hidden abilities added in generation 5, since that would be pretty much every Pokemon. The first Pokemon and the one that inspired this video is Shiftry. From generations 3 to 8, Shiftry had access to Chlorophyll and Early Bird, with Pickpocket being added in generation 5 as a hidden ability. This mon mostly had success as a Sun Sweeper in various tiers using Chlorophyll. While Chlorophyll might still be the best option competitively, Generation 9 introduced a new ability, Wind Rider, and bestowed it on the Shiftry, replacing the pretty useless Early Bird. What's nice about this ability is it giving an immunity to all wind-based moves. Not only this, but if hit by one of these moves or affected by Tailwind, this ability grants a Pokemon a +1 to their attack stat. When we look at a lot of the commonly used moves on this list, Shiftry is weak to a lot of them, including common spread moves like Heat Wave, Blizzard, and Icy Wind. One of Shiftry's biggest issues is getting an opportunity to switch in safely. So on teams not running Sun, Shiftry now has a useful ability to run and can even give itself a pseudo shift gear by using Tailwind. While most ability changes are positive, some actually can hurt the Pokemon. This is the case of Generation 7 Gengar. It had access to the great ability Levitate from Generations 3 to 6, giving it a ground immunity alongside its natural normal and fighting immunities from being a ghost type. As part poison type, this is an amazing ability to have as it allows more switching opportunities to an otherwise frail mon. But come Generation 7, Levitate was changed to Curse Body as Gengar's lone ability. This gives Gengar a ground weakness instead of an immunity. Curse Body isn't a useless ability by any means, as it has a 30% chance to disable a damaging move when hit by it for 3 additional turns. It can be great, but is very luck-based and can be a non-factor, while Levitate is more consistent and useful. This makes Gengar vulnerable to hazards like spikes and sticky web now, but also allows it to absorb toxic spikes, so there is at least some positive. But overall, this ability change shouldn't do Gengar many favors, and it would go back to Levitate in a heartbeat. There have been a handful of Pokemon who were supposed to gain access to certain hidden abilities and had them switched before they were released. The legendary beasts were originally going to have access to abilities that gave them immunities to their specific types, before all receiving inner focus instead. Zapdos was lined up to receive Lightning Rod before having Static replacing it, which isn't a huge downgrade. And a big one is one I'm sure we're all grateful for. That's the Chandelure line not having access to Shadow Tag, which was its original hidden ability before it had Infiltrator. How do you think these Pokemon would do competitively with these abilities instead of the ones they ended up with? The Scolipede line was in the same group as Chandelure and Zapdos, but it actually had access to its hidden ability in Generation 5. Its Quick Feet ability wasn't very useful on it, due to it being a physical attacking poison type. This meant a Flame Orb would hurt it more than help it, and a Toxic Orb wouldn't have an effect. So you would only get the speed boost from Paralysis, which is very unreliable, or Sleep, which requires rest talk sets. Scolipede then received a way better ability in Speed Boost the next generation. It also had its attack stat bumped up from base 90 to base 100, which only helped. As far as competitive singles go, this allowed Scolipede to function decently in OU and as an Uber's lead. Having access to Speed Boost allowed it to outspeed pretty much everything after a Protect. It could set up spikes, toxic spikes, threaten a Deoxys lead with Pin Missile breaking its sash, and slapping Endeavor as its last slot to rack up big damage, especially if taken down to its focus sash. This mon was solid in Generation 7 as well with Speed Boost, allowing it to naturally take on the Tapus with its poison typing and be a good Z Crystal user. It could always provide good hazard support too. Without Speed Boost, I don't think this mon would be getting out of the lower tiers. It's not a very widespread ability, and the value of going first can never be overstated. I'm going to get to the mons who had the biggest ability buffs in a second, but there are a few more ability changes I want to cover. But I want to know what Pokemon you think should get one of their not so useful abilities swapped out with a better one. Gallade hasn't been terrible competitively. Its Mega definitely gave it the power and speed to succeed a bit, and Inner Focus was definitely an upgrade over Steadfast and Justified, especially in doubles where Fake Out is such a common threat. But something has always been lacking with Gallade. It's not its move pool, as it actually has top 5 for Pokemon who can learn the most moves and a really solid coverage pool. Its typing is also solid, and it has a great attack stat. But I think having abilities that didn't really help it offensively, and a middling speed stat was what held it back. Steadfast has never been good due to how situational it is, and Justified requires you to take a dark type hit to get a +1 attack boost, which Gallade can't do too well considering that would likely be knockoff, and it has pitiful physical bulk. In Generation 9 though, the ability Sharpness was introduced, and Gallade is one of 4 Pokemon to gain access. It's cool because the other Fremons with Sharpness were newly introduced, so they went out of their way to give Gallade some love. The 1.5 times boost to slicing moves is terrific for Gallade though, since it can run basically a whole moveset of super strong attacks while holding a Choice Scarf to patch up its speed. It has dual type stab that gets boosted higher than the stronger stab options that have drawbacks, and its coverage options basically hit with a stab bonus too. The only other moves that aren't boosted by Sharpness you would see Gallade using are Knockoff, Sword Stance, and maybe Shadow Sneak for priority. In singles at least, this boosted Gallade from just below untiered to being a respectable middle tier Pokemon that could be a solid wall breaker wherever it goes. Some other Pokemon that received new abilities in later generations are Beartic, who really looked like it was going to be solid, gaining the newly added Slush Rush ability in Generation 7. This doubles Beartic's speed in snow, and they buff his base attack by 20 points as well. But it just wasn't enough, as its strongest stab move in Icicle Crash doesn't hit nearly as hard as you'd think, and up until this generation it had to rely on Superpower as a coverage option. Its speed is also pretty bad, so you wouldn't outspeed most Scarfers even in snow or rain. You're better off using something like Arctozoke or a Lowland Sandslash. The Weezing line received 2 new abilities in Generation 8 with the release of Galarian Weezing. It gained Stench, an ability you would never use on this mon, and Neutralizing Gas. While Levitate is definitely great, and usually preferred on Weezing due to removing its ground weakness in favor of an immunity, Neutralizing Gas could come in handy too. This is true in doubles as you're able to turn off virtually all non-form changing abilities. You can cripple opposing Pokemon who rely on their abilities to succeed, while bringing powerful Pokemon who are held back by their terrible ability. Although this is often a gimmicky ability to use in doubles, this role is pretty much just done better by Galarian Weezing. It only gains a steel weakness with a fairy typing, while gaining a much better stab combination, a nice dark resistance, and access to Strange Steam, which is a solid move to have as a lone attack on this mostly support mon. Now it's time to cover the Pokemon who received, in my opinion, the biggest ability buffs, and they all have something in common. These 4 Pokemon all had weather summoning abilities added in Generation 7. Shifting their roles from subpar Pokemon who lack unique aspects to ones that you can build an entire team style around. We'll start with Vanniluxe, who gained access to Snow Warning. This Pokemon became the second fastest but hardest hitting snow setter available. It has less weaknesses than Abomasnow and Aurorus. It can run offensive sets effectively due to having enough speed to be a decent Specs or Scarf holder. It can now run the high base power move Blizzard without worrying about missing. It can hit hard with Freeze Dry or support in doubles with Icy Wind. Vanilluxe's bulk is surprisingly decent under snow now, with ice types receiving a defense boost and it already having solid special bulk. It can now set up Aurora Veil by itself and really cements itself as a great snow setter, only outclassed by a Lowland Ninetales who outspeeds it significantly and has a better typing. A Pokemon who had a bigger glow up than Vanilluxe is Torkoal. With access to Drought, you will never see this mon running its former abilities. Torkoal is now especially useful in doubles thanks to Drought, combined with its great spread move options in Eruption and Heat Wave. Solar Beam is a good tool to deal with water, rock, and ground types that threaten it, as it skips the charging turn in Sun. 85 base special attack is pretty solid when coming off of a 150 base power move boosted by the Sun. But Torkoal has other attributes that make it good too. Its insane physical bulk lets it take common spread moves like EQ and Rock Slide, while Drought weakens water moves. It can rock support moves like Yawn, or be a hazard control mon in singles with access to Rapid Spin and Stealth Rock. It also helps its teammates by activating sun-based abilities, which are usually Chlorophyll, and allowing them to use moves they normally wouldn't, like Weather Ball, Growth, Solar Beam, and Solar Blade. The last Pokemon we're going to cover before revealing the biggest buff is Gigalith. It gained access to ability Sandstream, allowing it to set up Sandstorm upon entry. At 25 base speed, it shares the trait with Torkoal of being a slow weather setter. This is actually pretty nice because if 2 weather setters are set in at once, the slower Pokemon will have its weather activated last, thus gaining the weather advantage. Sandstorm already helps this rock type by boosting its decent special defense to really solid levels, pairing nicely with its exceptional physical bulk. This could let it run weakness policy to boost its great 135 base attack and just tank hits better. Gigalith can now gain chip damage on opponents with sand and activate its allies' sand-based abilities. It may still be inferior to Hippowdon and Tyranitar in most situations, but it provides a solid mid-tier sand setter that differentiates itself from those two. It has less weaknesses than Tyranitar and much greater special bulk than Hippo. It can work well in Trick Room and underspeeds every other weather setter not named Torkoal. Now the biggest ability buff in my opinion goes to the Mon who gain access to probably the best weather in the game. This honor goes to Generation 3's second regional bird, Pelipper. With access to Drizzle, this Mon went from terrible bottom tier forgotten Mon to premier rain facilitator. Since its main competition in most formats is Politoed, people quickly saw how much more it had to offer than the frog they've been using. With access to U-turn and Roost, Pelipper became a more reliable rain setter in singles due to being able to come in and gain favorable matchups for its rain sweepers and stay healthy to set up rain multiple times. It gained a 10-point boost to its special attack as well, making it just a little bit stronger than Politoed. And with access to a Hurricane that can't miss in the rain, Pelipper can threaten KOs on grass types that want to take a water move and hit dragons and other waters harder. Pelipper also has Tailwind over the other rain setters. It can run Wide Guard and Defog as support options, making it just a more versatile Mon than Politoed. In singles, it can catch people off guard who run into a Choice Specs offensive Pelipper and get destroyed by a powerful Weather Ball or Hurricane. Pelipper has had a huge glow up after toiling away in the lowest tier since its incarnation. It has happily seen plenty of OU and VGC play since this buff. Do you think any other Pokemon's new ability helped it more than Pelipper? Consider hidden abilities from Generation 5 and compare that. Thanks for watching, buds, and I'll catch you in the next video.